Eric Bischoff here again, telling you about our friends over at SaveWithConrad.com. Now, Conrad's always talking about how they are helping homeowners save money, but did you know that Conrad and his team can also help you become a homeowner? They make the home buying process more enjoyable than, I don't know, making out with Stephanie and Linda. Ouch! But don't take my word for it.
Hi, I'm Sarah Davis, and I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. So my husband has been a huge fan of Conrad's podcast for many, many years. And for years, we were on road trips, and he would have me listen to it. And then I got really into it. And so when it came time for us to buy a house, it was kind of like, there's really no other option at this point. Like, we have to go down this path, right? It was the best. I worked with Steve. I don't know what to do. I was looking more for preparing to buy a house. How do I get this in order? What does this need to look like? What do I need to move around? What's more important that I pay off first? Because I'm a first-time home buyer. I don't know what that needs to look like. So that's when I called you guys and I talked with Steve, and phenomenal from day one. I got a full education on home buying before I was ever asked to fill out an application, before I was ever asked to do anything, which is just, I cannot brag on you guys enough. I literally cannot tell enough people about you, because we would not have a home if it weren't for you, if it weren't for that interaction and weren't for the learning process. And I feel like I went into being a first-time home buyer by the time we got through the end of the process with the same education that people need 4 or 5 homes to buy. And so now I feel like, all right, well, we can do this. We can do real estate. I can actually make good decisions and ask good questions at closing and beyond because of everything that you taught me. My name is Sarah Davis, and I got into my dream home with Save with Conrad.
And unlike the dirt sheets, we're not making this up. Check out all the 5-star reviews. Go to SaveWithConrad.com and do it today. You'll be grateful you did.
NMLS number 65084, Equal Housing Lender. Woo!
Welcome to Something To Wrestle with Bruce Prichard. Well, you know,
that's not a rib.
She pooted.
What a rib? No, yeah,
there's no box of gimmicks.
Rumor and innuendo.
I don't deal in rumor and innuendo. And was he there? I was there. I don't give a shit. I ain't scared.
I ain't scared of shit.
Fuck him.
Fuck you, Bruce.
I love you.
Double cheeseburger, double cheese, double mayo, double onion, motherfucker.
Bruce Prichard.
And a week after that, Rock, as the Intercontinental Champion, would take on Triple H, who at the time was the European Champion. And they go to a DQ, and this really starts the DX Nation feud officially. And in the process, it sort of turns DX face. The crowd had really mostly been booing before this, but they had started to turn because DX was doing sort of cool heel stuff. And here, when they're feuding with the Nation, who are clearly heels, DX sort of become the baby faces. What made sense about a DX Nation feud?
They were absolutely opposites. So you had DX, it was anti-authority and anti-everything, and then you had Nation, which was pretty much a solidified group that was all about structure. And to me, this grouping and this period is where both Triple H and, more importantly, Rock was great all before this, no doubt. But it was here that Rock came into his own, because they would go out and Russo would type up scripts for everybody to, back and forth. And like I said earlier, Rock was one that Rock was a professional, and Rock would go out and he would pretty much stick to the script. Well, Hunter would go out and they're live, and Hunter would go off script. Rock would try and bring it back, to what was written. And Rock would come back and he would be all pissed off, and he would yell and scream at me and go, hey, I'm out there, I'm doing my job, I'm doing what's written down on the paper, and this guy's out there going into business for himself. And I would say to Rock, I said, yeah, and right now he's downstairs and Vince is chewing his ass out. If you can take the ass chewing, we're live. What are they going to do? If you can hang and you want to make a comeback, then make your comeback. We're live. What are they going to do? And the next time we were live and they went out to cut a promo and Triple H went off script, Rock went off script. And they went back and forth, and there was genuine animosity between the two. And neither one knew what the other one was going to say. And they're going back and forth trying to one-up one another for real, and the audience felt that. And that is what made that rivalry so damn good, because it was true and it was real.
And they're off to a start the next week. It's June 1st. Owen, Rock, and D'Lo defeat Triple H, Billy Gunn, and Road Dogg in a 6-man elimination match. Ultimately, Triple H would pin Rock, but then he would be DQ'd. So Owen, Rock, and D'Lo wind up getting the win here. 2 weeks after that, The Rock would defeat Vader to retain the Intercontinental title. And a week after that, The Rock would defeat Triple H in a King of the Ring tournament match. As you may recall, in 1997, Triple H won the King of the Ring, but he's back here in the tournament in 98, and The Rock gets the victory. This takes us to King of the Ring 1998 in Pittsburgh, which we're going to be covering this coming June. In the semifinals on that show, Rock would pin Dan Severn. How did Rock like working with Severn? You talk about styles clash. That's about it, is it not?
Nobody liked working with Dan. Dan's a great guy, but Dan has his own way of working, and Dan's a shooter and an extra tough son of a gun. But he could be a little tough to work with sometimes, and Rock's a worker's worker.
He had his work cut out for him here, man, because in the finals that night, he loses to Shamrock. He makes Rock tap out again. So on this night, he wrestles 2 UFC Hall of Famers, Dan Severn and Ken Shamrock, and for the 3rd straight pay-per-view, as the Intercontinental Champion, no less, The Rock is defeated by Ken Shamrock. I guess we should cover this. I think we've talked about it before, but DX would come out and impersonate the Nation. Triple H was the Croc. X-Pac was Miyazaki Henry. Billy Gunn was the Godfather, and Road Dogg was D'Lo. Pretty famous segment. Did DX practice this during the day? Was everything out there ad-libbed? How did this go down?
What happened first? Did the Nation go out with, or did DX go out first where they impersonated each other? It was DX first. DX did this impersonation first, I believe. And it was, it was making fun of the Nation, and it was the guy that stole the show, in my opinion, was Road Dogg doing D'Lo Brown. Because Road Dogg did the head bob and he did the yeah, that's right. And
the brother was bacon.
Yeah. I smell what he's cooking. But I thought everybody it was a great parody. I thought it was absolutely hilarious.
We've talked about it before, but I guess we should mention it here. Jason Sensation was here doing the Owen Hart impersonation, and I just recently...
That's where I was going. Thank you.
I just recently watched Wrestling with Shadows, and beforehand, I think, I might be wrong, but I think before Canadian Stampede, they have a clip of Jason Sensation as a fan with a megaphone, like leading the crowd in a chant, and this is a year later, he's in the ring doing an impression of Owen Hart. What did Owen think of the impression?
Loved it. I think it was Owen Hart that is the one that it was either Owen or Carl DeMarco, but he did Jason's best impression at the time was Owen Hart. He did Owen Hart to a T. He did a good Brett. Obviously, he did all the Canadians pretty good because he was Canadian. But Jason's Sensation is as far as his mocking people and doing the impersonations was spot on. And he loved the Hart Foundation, but it was, you think about it, Owen Hart, it's not like a really overt personality to do.
Right.
But Jason did it to a point that it was positively hilarious. So that made it even that much better. But yeah, Jason was a fan that did these impersonations, and we said, "Hey, kid, come on."
How was Jason? This has to be like every wrestling fan's dream, right? To not only be acknowledged by the company, but to be invited into the back, and then to be given the opportunity to perform with some of these guys in a WWE ring. It feels like a life moment for Jason, right?
It was, because Jason always wanted to be a wrestler. Jason later on, as far as I know, I think he went on to actually wrestle in independents up in the Toronto area. but we used him for different things when we needed an impersonation, if you will. Jason did some different stuff for us, and he's a talented kid.
Of course, we should mention X-Pac's here in blackface. Not something that ages well. I know you've told us before, but X-Pac got some sort of weird permission from Mia Zark Henry here, and they even make a reference for him eating the doo-doo sandwich. This was like the biggest rib of all. Who booked it? How was X-Pac with it? How was Mark Henry with it? Did anybody raise their hand and say, this is a bad idea?
No. Russo booked it, and I thought that everybody did a great job with it. I thought it was hilarious. It was simply a parody on the Nation. They took it over the top. It wasn't something that was meant to ever be taken seriously.
Sure.
And they went way, way over the top with it so that you could laugh at it in different times.
I'm sure we'll circle back to that conversation another time. Let's talk about the Triple H version of The Rock, the Croc. It feels like The Rock may have laughed at this, but also been sort of pissed about it. What do you remember?
I think he was laughing on the outside, trying to let everybody know that he's cool with it. But I think that there were some things that were ribbing on the square, if you will, probably a little too close to home. But you can't have thin skin. And it was a parody. That's what it was. And he got it at that. It actually, drew some money, and it got some interest in those guys. So they got to make a comeback. Thought it was good stuff.
It was good stuff. The next week, we see The Rock defeat X-Pac by DQ to retain the Intercontinental title. Then we're on to Fully Loaded, where The Rock and Triple H went to a draw in a best 2 of 3 falls Intercontinental title match. We've covered this in great detail on our Fully Loaded 98 show, available in the archives. Anything else we need to throw in that maybe we previously didn't discuss here?
God, I think we've covered it. And again, this is another one that a rivalry that you think is going to be, okay, we're doing it now. We'll get our fill of it, and we'll have a blow off later and move on to the next thing. It's a rivalry that lived on. And I think still to this day, people are talking about, will Rock come back and will he work with Triple H? Will Triple H work again? And is that the match they're going to have at WrestleMania? I saw, this week, people speculating that.
August 17th, we get Degeneration X taking on the Nation, but they go to a no contest in a street fight. And the week after that, we get something interesting. It's August 24th. Chyna comes to the ring all by herself and calls out The Rock. And The Rock comes to the ring, and Rocky Sucks chants are everywhere. And then the Nation comes to the ring. The Rock shows Chyna on the Tron that DX is locked in the dressing room by a forklift, which is parked against the dressing room door. And The Rock starts dressing down Chyna. She goes at him, but the rest of the Nation restrain her. Rock goes in to kiss her, but then he stops. And he tells Mark Henry to know his damn role, pucker up, and kiss her. Suddenly, Shawn Michaels hits the ring with a chair and hits Mark Henry on the head with it. What do you remember about this angle with the forklift and a random return of Shawn Michaels here and a little bit of a tease with a Chyna love story that we would see a lot of later?
I actually watched this recently, and I thought that, wow, this is another one. Wouldn't play well in 2017 because they were really rough on Chyna and pulling her hair, and it just was not PC, if you will. And trying to, even watching it now, just God, it made me feel really uncomfortable going back, thinking about some of the things that we did back in those days. But again, it was a different time, and you could always make the excuse, well, this is wrestling. It's professional wrestling. So you get away with it.
Well, it's also less than a year after this, she's the Intercontinental Champion.
Yeah, but at the same time, she's still a woman, and it was still, male and female, and it was physical, and it doesn't age well, as you would say. So it was controversial at the time, and always nice to get surprises in and have Shawn come back, and it was just a way to tell a different story. We use that damn forklift in a door. That's how I got my face kicked in by Brock Lesnar. Same spot with the forklift in front of a door. But when you think of different things to do, how are you going to move a however many 1,000-pound forklift? So it's just a creative way to tie somebody up.
Of course, the AWA was on its last legs by the time Bischoff gets there. Money's tight. So eventually, Eric has to audition with the WWF. And this is pretty surreal video to see. It's out there. It's on the Bischoff DVD that the WWE just released last year. And it's probably on YouTube somewhere. Bruce, you were there for this. Tell everyone how this went down as far as how it came to be, who interviewed him, where it happened, all that good stuff.
Well, we were always on the hunt for talent, as I said, and always looking for play-by-play guys, interview guys, just different on-air talent. And Vince was always looking for a youthful, new look.
So you called him?
Eric had sent in his tape and his resume, so we had done a casting call. We had done a casting call in Hollywood, and we were bringing different people in at that time. So he had probably sent his stuff in, and we had called him and decided to bring him in. But we flew him in for an interview and an audition, and interviewed him there at 120 Hamilton Avenue. Vince and I did it.
So that's in Stamford. This is before Titan Towers, right?
I think we had Titan Towers. Titan Towers were being built at that time. They might have been in the towers. My office was at the studio at this time, though.
Okay, so you guys fly Bischoff in from Minnesota over to Stamford, bring him to the TV studio, which is not Titan Towers. Who all is involved in the interview? We've seen the famous video, and there's a video here of him with a broom. Tell everybody the story about the broom, and then who all was in the room for this.
I believe the only ones that were doing the interview at that point were me and Vince. And Renee Dubois, I think, was the HR person at that time. She may have been involved too. But as far as the audition purposes, that was me. I think we had him sit in and do play-by-play with Lord Alfred Hayes. But the broom was a bit that Vince and I did with everybody. We wanted to see how well someone could sell on camera in an impromptu setting. So here's a broom, here's a magical broom. It can be anything that you want it to be. Sell it to me. Tell me why I have to have this broom. And we like to see what kind of imagination people had, whether they tried to sell me a broom, whether they tried to turn the broom into a magical unicorn, or whatever the hell it was. We just wanted to see how they would react to a somewhat silly request on the spot, what they would do.
Is this like the wrestling equivalent of the sales version of Sell Me This Pen?
Yes.
Who do you remember in particular doing this broom bit and hitting a home run with it?
Sean Mooney did well with it. There were a few that actually kind of took off with it and really did well. But we did it to everybody. We did it to everybody that came in.
Well, obviously, Eric didn't get the gig. He shows up as an announcer for WCW on their C Squad the next year. Given that you guys had talked to him, were you surprised to see him land in WCW just a year later, or did you give it a second thought since you guys had passed?
Yeah, really didn't give it a second thought.
Just a couple years later, Bischoff would land the executive producer position for WCW. He's replacing the now fired Bill Watts. And it's been said that Bill Shaw and Bob Dew expected Tony Schiavone, Craig Leathers, and Eric Bischoff to all submit proposals for their plans for WCW. But others assumed Jim Ross would be the guy to get the job, since Watts was the previous man in charge, and he had been there a while. Apparently Bischoff made the best presentation and somehow goes from C-Squad with big ideas to sitting in the big chair. Flair was notably supportive of, quote-unquote, the kid here. Bruce, what was the reaction within Titan Towers when a guy who interviewed a broom to be on your TV 3 years prior is now running your competition?
No one really knew that much about Eric Bischoff, other than he had aspirations to be a television producer outside of wrestling. And the scuttlebutt, the word going around was that Eric and Jason Hervey, who was a star of the Wonder Years and also a producer, his mom was a and his parents, I guess, both, they ran a talent agency in Hollywood. But they had developed a game show, a kids' game show. And that was part of the presentation that they had made to TBS. And in that, Eric made a proposal to run WCW. And WCW looked at it as, you know what, we've been going with the wrestling people up until this point, and it's not working. Maybe we need to get outside of the box and go with a television production person versus an old wrestler to run the business into things, and maybe try something else, because this just isn't working. And that was the feeling with Eric. They felt that he presented fresh ideas and wasn't looking at it from a wrestler's point of view. And in addition, because we didn't know that much about Eric, we kind of brushed it off as though, well, who the hell is this guy? What the hell is he going to do? He doesn't have that much wrestling experience that anyone knew of. So to us, it really wasn't any threat at that point.
And at that time, everybody who was in a higher up position within the WWF was an old time wrestling person.
Somewhat, yeah. Had wrestling experience, yes.
New Year's Revolution, January 8th, 2006. For the Intercontinental title, Ric Flair beat Edge by DQ to retain his title. But in the same night, Cena retained his world title after a hard-fought Elimination Chamber match. And after the match, Edge cashed in his Money in the Bank contract and defeated John Cena to win his very first WWE title. I got to tell you, man, as a wrestling fan, this is one of my most memorable moments. I wasn't even a huge fan at this time, but I just didn't see it coming. And I, like everybody else, had probably forgot Edge even had the fucking Money in the Bank contract. So when he cashed in, it was a moment I won't soon forget. Who realized that this was a possibility? Whose idea was it? How'd you keep it a secret? How did Edge take it? When did he find out he was champ? Tell us all about this night.
Well, we kind of kept it under wraps, and I think it was Michael Hayes who first brought it up as a what if scenario. And as we start talking about it and going on, as you just said, everybody had pretty much forgot about this Money in the Bank thing because it hadn't been cashed in. It's like been almost a year now, and it just was a prop more than anything for Edge to go out with every week. And you didn't really give it a second thought. And nobody really understood that, which we really didn't understand. You know, there were no rules per se, but you can cash it in at any time. Cena's just been through a war. Why can't you cash it in at the end of the night?
It's fucking awesome. And since he's been a fan since he was a kid and even voted most likely to win the WWF title, this has to be, you know, I know we've said it with Shawn Michaels, the boyhood dream is cut. This shit's for real for Edge here, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And he was excited. Cena was excited about it because, you know, nobody knew. And I don't even think we smartened up a lot of the agents. Nobody, you know, wasn't on the board. There were very few people that knew what exactly was going to take place at the time. And when you can surprise and pop the backstage guys, you know that that's a hit with everybody at home.
The next night, Edge and Lita promise to be the rated R superstar and have a live sex celebration in the middle of the ring. Unbelievably, they set a bed up and put sheets on it, and then they start to strip. And they do lots of sexually suggestive things, like Lita bends over the bed and Edge gets behind her. Eventually they get under the bed or under the covers in the bed, and Lita takes her bra off and throws it out. But when she does,
yeah,
we have a phrase here on the show.
What's that phrase?
Vince McMahon likes it.
Well, titties.
Took a
red
long.
Titties.
What did you say? Red? Oh my God.
Red.
Flair eventually comes out and calls Edge a disgrace and says he's horrible in the sack. So of course they end up fighting, and Edge gives Rick a concerto. Cena comes down to make the save, and you guys have to be getting some backlash, right? I mean, What was the reaction from USA and the sponsors and just mainstream media to this live sex celebration?
USA was fine with it. They knew about it ahead of time. Nobody was fine with the nipple slip. And I can't put this in the same category as Katie Vick, but I was the one that had to go and tell Adam and Lita the night before what we were going to do on Monday and pitch them. And let them know, okay, hey, we're doing this. Now, tomorrow night, here's what we're going to do. Lita hated it. I don't think Adam liked it. And they didn't want to do it. And it just took, it took a lot of convincing to finally get them to agree. Okay, let's go have fun with this, guys. Let's have a good attitude and go in and do this. Vince really wants it. And they went in with a good attitude, and they did their best, and they busted their ass out there, and it was what it was, but it cemented Edge as a top shit heel, and I think it cemented him, in that WWF champion.
Take a bite out of summer with HelloFresh. From chef-crafted seasonal recipes to their new fresh and fit summer menu, HelloFresh brings flavor right to your door. Pre-portioned ingredients help cut down on food waste, while step-by-step instructions make cooking a breeze, not a chore. Make your home the hangout for the rest of this summer with all the crowd-pleasing eats. Check this out. You've got backyard bratwurst bars to tangy key lime pies. How about the HelloFresh Market? It makes entertaining this summer a cinch. I can't recommend this enough. My wife and I felt like we were in a rut, but no longer. We've got over 100 different items just from the snacks. You see, there's more to this than just the delicious dinners. You can shop in this HelloFresh Market and get everything you need. Now, when it comes to dinner itself, and your lunches for that matter, how about Calorie Smart and Protein Smart? These are both lunch and dinner options. So if you're looking to get more protein like Double J, or maybe you're trying to cut some lbs like Tony Schiavone, HelloFresh makes it easy. They've got something for everybody too, even vegan dinners for you to choose from. What's great about this is you get out of that rut. They've got 40 recipes for you to try every single week. You'll never get bored. You'll always find something. But maybe my favorite part, I know my wife loves it, is they have a fast and fresh option. These are recipes you can have ready in 15 minutes. So not only is it faster than takeout, it's also 25% cheaper. And oh, by the way, it's better for you. They've got quality proteins, they've got fresh produce, they've got plans for every lifestyle. It's no wonder that HelloFresh is America's #1 meal kit. We absolutely love it. You will too. And I have to tell you, I felt intimidated when I saw some of these items. I was like, I'm not going to be able to make this. They give you everything you need. All the ingredients, all the right amount of that ingredient. It's pre-portioned. It eliminates the guesswork. And the instructions, man, there's photos. Even I can do it. You're going to love it. Go right now to HelloFresh.com/STW50 and use the code STW50 for 50% off plus free shipping. That's America's #1 meal kit, HelloFresh. Go to HelloFresh.com/STW50 and use the code STW50 for 50% off plus free shipping at HelloFresh.com/STW50. Okay, so let's get to it. It's the main event. Yokozuna, Bret Hart. Before we talk about the match, let's talk about what Bret wrote in his book. He says that when he first got to Vegas with his parents, Vince wanted to meet with him. So he goes and sits down with Vince, and Vince says, "This is what I want to do. I want you to drop the belt to Yoko tomorrow." This was not what I had expected. I sat there dumbstruck as he went on to explain how Fuji would screw me, throwing salt in my face, blinding me. And after Yoko was handed the belt, Hogan would rush to my aid, and in some kind of roundabout way, would end up winning the belt from Yoko right then and there. Like I was handing Vince my sword, I told him I appreciated everything he did for me, and I'd do whatever he wanted. Vince said, "Don't get bitter. I still have big plans for you." Sound bites flashed through my mind of Vince assuring me that I was the long-term champion, and not to worry about Hogan, who still hadn't even spoken to me yet. As I stood up to leave, I asked, Did you take the belt from me because I didn't do a good enough job? Of course not. I'm just going in a different direction. I'm still onwards and upwards for you. Nothing much is going to change for you. I was still totally crushed. As I lay in bed that night, the more I thought about what Vince had in his mind for Hogan, the more I felt that it would completely backfire on both of them. The hokey finish would stink, and maybe not immediately, but in the weeks to come, my fans, who were the biggest contingent of Vince's paying audience at that time, would gag on it. There was something different about my fans. They really believed in me as a person. By the time I got to the dressing room the following afternoon, word that I was losing the title had leaked out to the boys. Most of them were quiet, and some were angry. The Nasty Boys, Sean, Taker, and several others expressed their utter disappointment. Knowing I was losing the belt didn't stop me from planning on having a great match. I went over everything with Yoko and designed the match so that all the best moves were left for the final minute. Hogan arrived with his entourage, his wife, his manager, Beefcake, and Jimmy Hart. Clearly, he'd been in the know all along, probably from the first day he came back. Now he was suddenly acting like my long-lost pal and wearing a big smile that rightfully belonged to me. During our match, it was hot and dry in the desert, but a cool breeze made it impossible to work up a healthy sweat. An exhausted Yoko stampeded like a runway elephant, short-charging on my comeback and editing out all of my best spots. I was furious that he would take it upon himself to go home on his own. That's how I came to find myself crouched low, desperately hanging on Yoko's two massive calves in the sharpshooter, fighting with every ounce of strength not to let go. Fuji was caught off guard by the sudden ending, and it took him forever to find, unwrap, and throw a packet of what was actually baby powder into my eyes, supposedly blinding me. I fell back as Yoko hooked my leg and Hebner counted 1, 2, 3. Right on cue, Hogan hit the ring protesting the injustice that had been done to me, and Earl put on that classic expression of utter stupidity that all pro wrestling refs wear when convenient. As I feigned blindness, Hogan helped me out of the ring. Fuji stayed in the ring, absurdly challenging Hogan to a title match with Yoko right then and there. Yoko was still teetering from exhaustion and looking for a second win that wasn't there. Hogan blinked in astonishment at his sudden good fortune. As scripted, with my face buried in the crook of my arm, I waved to him to avenge my loss. Go get him, Hulk! I was really thinking, go ahead, Hogan. Take from me what I worked so hard to get. We'll just see how long you last. Hogan was champion again without even having a match, and before I'd even made it backstage. He simply ducked the powder that Fuji threw in his face, clotheslined Fuji, and dropped his big leg on Yoko. And I could hear the 1, 2, 3 and the roar of the crowd and Hogan's music thumping. I couldn't help but stare at the TV monitor, watching Hogan work the crowd, the same old posing routine, a hand behind the ear, shaking the world title belt in the air as if to say it belonged to him all along. A few minutes later, he came up to me, excited and happy, and said, "Thank you, brother. I won't forget it. I'll be happy to return the favor." I looked my old friend in the eye and said, "I'm going to remember that, Terry." As for Yoko, I was always a little pissed off at him for going home on me and not letting me show Vince, Hogan, and everyone else that we could tear the house down without their bullshit finish. Even so, it was the best match that Yoko ever had. Meltzer would rate it 3 stars. It goes 8 minutes and 55 seconds. What did you think of the match? And do you remember that sequence of events pretty much the way Bret Hart laid out in his book?
Yeah, pretty much. That's the sequence of events in the order that they happened. I thought that the match was good. The idea of Hulk winning the title probably came up a few weeks before WrestleMania.
Let me give you this. Hulk Hogan wrote in his book, it would be another chance for Vince to see if he could move beyond Hulkamania, to see if his company could go on without me, just like it had gone on without all the other stars who left over the years. If they would have gotten behind me and pushed Hulkamania as hard as ever, we may have gotten the company's momentum back. Instead, Vince chose to go a different way. He didn't have anything as exciting as Hulkamania, so everything gradually started to come crashing down. Then the federal government started to really put pressure on Vince. They tore the guts out of his business, and he had a hard time regrouping. So it all just hit bottom. The industry, the wrestlers, fan interest, the numbers, and my future with the WWF. By mutual agreement, I was gone for almost a year. During that time, I filmed Mr. Nanny, and I also started wrestling again in Japan, where the fans still love me regardless of the steroid mess. It was a refreshing change, brother. I didn't have to cut my hand to my ear to get the crowd behind me. I didn't have to do the big boot in the face and the leg drop to get a big cheer. I could just go out to the ring and wrestle. It was fun. But back in the U.S., the wrestling business was just getting worse. Finally, it seemed like Vince McMahon was willing to put me back in the spotlight, if only for a little while. I was going to wrestle at WrestleMania 9 in Caesars Palace in Las Vegas. Not in the main event, but in a tag team match. The main event would pit Yokozuna, a 700-pound challenger, against the champion, Bret Hart. Yokozuna was slated to win the match and take the heavyweight belt. Here's where we get cooking. But then when I got to the building, I told Vince, look, man, we both know I'm done here. The moment has passed. The love affair is over. But I've got an idea that will allow me to pass the torch. And what's that? Vince said. After my tag match is over, when Bret Hart gets beat by Yokozuna, how about if I come out to protest the way Bret lost? Yokozuna's manager, Mr. Fuji, can challenge me to get in the ring against Yokozuna, and boom, I can beat Yokozuna to win the title. Then I go to the next pay-per-view and drop the belt right back to Yokozuna, and I'm out of here. That was the deal. Vince agreed to it, and I thought, boy, I just stole me a couple more big paydays. And I didn't mind doing a job for Yokozuna because I love the guy to death. It was all set. So now a minute ago, you said this was the case before. Hogan's taking credit as it being his idea when he's in Vegas.
Yeah, and that would be wrong. And I'll tell you, I'll explain to you again the narrative and why it's wrong. This is what I wanted you to remind me about. We'll talk about pay-per-view and all of that right now. So, as I said, a few weeks before, Vince, and I assume it was after a conversation with Hulk, Vince feels is going to give added value to the European tour to have Hulk go over there with the championship. Came up with this idea and this thing to switch the title at WrestleMania to do the thing with Bret, everything that was laid out by Bret. Behind the scenes even more, DirecTV was becoming a player in the pay-per-view game. And cable companies on-demand pay where you could order your pay-per-view channels with your remote control was becoming a big thing. You didn't have to call the cable company to order pay-per-view. And the Grateful Dead, I believe, were the first people to ever do this. They had a huge concert on pay-per-view, a live concert with the Grateful Dead. Got tremendous response. The cable companies came back a week later and did an encore presentation of the Grateful Dead concert. And because of word of mouth and how great this concert was, and if you missed it live, here's your second chance to see the Grateful Dead. We're going to show an encore presentation all weekend long on DirecTV. Because if you would look at those pay-per-view channels, you would see just emptiness, and they would be running the same movie on 10 different channels. So the airtime was essentially free. And I posed the question to Vince when he's pitching this idea. I said, hey, the Grateful Dead did this deal, and I explained the whole encore presentation. I said, what if I love the idea of switching the title to Hulk, because on Monday we now have an opportunity to promote Monday night on Raw an encore presentation. If you missed WrestleMania, because prior to this you had the live opportunity to see the pay-per-view, and that was it. The pay-per-view's on at 4 o'clock. The pay-per-view, whatever time it was on one time. And maybe you got a repeat for the West Coast. But that was it. They didn't have repeats. And so we are promoting all the way up into this, Bret Hart versus Yokozuna, Hulk Hogan, the Mega Power, or Beefcake and them against Money Inc. But now on Monday, we have an opportunity to talk about, holy shit, what a great event. New world champion, Hulk Hogan. And people are going, what? Because they didn't know Hulk was even competing for the WWF Championship. So now you have a story to tell on Monday. You have a second chance to sell pay-per-view with an event that you couldn't promote before that. And we pitched it to some of the promotion and marketing people who all shit on it. But Vince liked it. And he said, well, let's try it. So it was kind of a twofold deal. It was one, he wanted to get the title on Hogan for in his head to add value to the European tour. And two, let's try this encore presentation because it's a unique approach. You talk about what you're going to expect in your promotion for an event. Now, after the event, you can promote, holy shit, what you missed. So for those of you that didn't buy the pay-per-view event, this weekend, all weekend long, you're going to have another opportunity to see it and see Hulk Hogan become the WWF champion. So, yes, we knew in advance. And we had already put the wheels in motion to have the encore the next weekend and had all those spots. And we would have everything ready for Monday to promote that. It was not organic. It did not happen that weekend.
Meltzer even wrote as much, saying on television Monday night they announced that Yokozuna was filing a protest and that a ruling would be made on television as to the future of the title. The ads for the replay of Mania talk about seeing the title change hands twice in the same night at the greatest WrestleMania ever. So it's clearly a marketing ploy from the beginning. I'm curious about something that you're not going to want to give me a straight answer on, so just talk around it. Did Hogan make more money than anybody on the card that night?
I have no idea.
Freestyle again.
I don't know. I don't know. I wasn't doing payoffs then, so I really don't know.
Hogan didn't work the tapings the next week, and in fact only worked 3 dates in May in tag matches against Money Inc. He did work a Japanese date and spent some time filming the Thunder in Paradise pilot. The plan was for him to come back in June and work 3 days a week, with Duggan taking his spot when he was off. Bruce, in hindsight, was the decision to have Hogan win the belt a knee-jerk reaction, or is it a mistake, I guess is what I'm asking, considering that he's got all these other irons in the fire with Mr. Nanny and Thunder in Paradise and wants a limited schedule and top money, and does this not seem a little bit unworkable?
Well, I do think in hindsight that it was a knee-jerk reaction. I also think in hindsight that it would have been better to stay the course. I wouldn't have had a problem dropping the title to Yoko and leaving it on Yoko for a while. However, the decision was always, we knew Hogan was going to go make movies. We knew Hogan was going to go do his TV show. So the decision to put the title on him was never long-term anyway. It was a short-term fix. It was a short-term idea for a short-term return. That was it. It was a shot in the arm. Hindsight being 2020, was it the best decision? Probably not.
A week later, Meltzer writes that WrestleMania did a 2.1 buy rate, which would be about 430,000 buys, or roughly a $5.8 million gross for Titan. He also says this would be the lowest of any previous WrestleMania, but that was expected. And the amount of the drop between this year and the previous year was less than had been the case in the previous years. So 5 to 6 was a big dip, 6 to 7 was a big dip, 7 to 8, another dip. So the dip from 8 to 9 was not as bad. So in a weird way, it's a good sign that we're not losing as much as we've been losing, but we're still losing. Meltzer writes, one estimate is that Hogan's appearance at this show was worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.2 million based on pay-per-view. It's harder to determine the live gate. But did you ever get numbers like that when we added this guy, this is the effect it made to the pay-per-view buys?
No, not really, no. That's hard to tell. I mean, that's all speculative.
It comes out after the fact that a lot of casino buys apparently were not actually claimed. So people were given comps to move from their cheaper seats into the more expensive sections. So while they claimed to sell out, it wasn't actually a sellout, but they probably still got paid from the casino. So it wound up being a really big swing for Titan. So the idea here again is Caesars and the casinos may have actually paid for the tickets. So whether or not they're all actually there or used or sat in doesn't matter as much because they made their money. So it does matter when you watch the match and you see people just kind of waving at the camera and sitting on their hands. a lot of them aren't wrestling fans, but the tickets were paid for, and they did really, really well compared to WrestleMania 8. And by comparison, at the Hoosier Dome, there's 62,000 people there. So the money's not that different, but the money is a lot better from a net profit standpoint. So while the gross may be similar, the net is a lot more here, if that makes sense. Do you remember this being perceived as being a financial success after the show?
It was not considered a failure. So it was decent money, and it was better business than we had been doing. So yeah, they were happy with it.
Hindsight is always 20/20, but you agree that Hogan maybe wasn't what was best for business long term, but he was what was best for business short term?
Yes.
If you had to do it over again today, would you do it the same way, or would
No.
you keep it with Yoko?
No, I probably would have kept it with Yoko.
That would have been the first WrestleMania where a heel finishes the show as champion. That would have been okay for you, but maybe not Vince, right?
Oh, it always would have been. Yes, it definitely. Vince wouldn't have liked that at all. He would have fought that tooth and nail.
Many believe this to be the worst WrestleMania of all time. What say you?
Let me think about that one. Either 8 or 9. So yeah, it could be up there. Definitely, it may be the worst.
Well, want to know what happened when Bret confronted Hogan about the switch? Find out after these words.
From RGT4Law.com.
Have you or a loved one been affected by mesothelioma? You may not have to file a lawsuit to get a recovery. Go to RGT4Law.com and fill out the easy form for more information. Robert Taylor, RG Taylor II, PC and Associates, Houston, Texas.
Okay, so before we get to how Bret confronted Hogan, I had a minute during the Rob Taylor commercial there to pull it in my Google machine, and I'm going to call bullshit on something, Bruce. Just a little while ago, you were dying on the hill that we needed to have Hogan as a part of this European tour, and I thought you were referencing the summer tour, which I knew he wasn't on. He was gone by then. But you maintained to know there was one in April, which made sense because they always go to Europe right after WrestleMania. Well, I pulled the results up. Let's run through some. April 8th in Paris, France, Yokozuna works with Jim Duggan. The next day in Bournemouth, England, on April 9th, Yokozuna works with Jim Duggan. The next day in somewhere in England, April 10th, Yokozuna works with Jim Duggan. The next day in Sheffield, Yokozuna, you want to guess who he worked with? Jim Duggan. And then we're back to Scotland. You want to guess who Yokozuna worked with?
Who did Hogan work with?
He's not on any of the fucking shows.
Sure he is. He's got to be. In May?
No, in April. He's not on any of them.
Yeah, but in May he was.
Okay, well, you were saying that it was right after WrestleMania, so I threw it in my Google machine.
Well, May is after WrestleMania.
Okay, so you're maintaining...
Between WrestleMania and King of the Ring.
Let's see. Memphis, Manhattan Center, Louisville, Los Angeles, San Francisco. We're not to Europe yet. Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Nova Scotia, Ontario. Yeah, they didn't go to Europe in May.
Yeah, they did. They went to Europe between WrestleMania and King of the Ring.
I agree. They did it.
Behind it.
They did it the next week in April.
That was Hogan that did it.
Hogan's
Hogan
not
was
on
the card.
No, he's not.
Well, that was the reason it was done. Go back. Do you have my books there? Go back and look through my books.
I'm telling you, he's not on them.
Okay. Well, I'm telling you the reason it was done, and that was the idea behind it.
He worked a house.
It was Hogan's farewell tour overseas.
But he never did it, is what I'm saying. Are you calling bullshit on this?
Dude, I don't know. I don't have the books in front of me.
He worked a show in Japan on May 3rd.
And we kind of alluded to that a little earlier. He worked in the Manhattan Center in May. He, did some interview segments.
Where did Hogan work in April and May? You tell me he didn't work?
No, I'm not saying he didn't work.
If you tell me that he didn't work overseas, I'm probably going to say that your information online may be incorrect. That's what I'm telling you. Yeah. Do you have my books there?
I don't. Did you leave 94 here?
I don't know.
93 here?
I think so.
I'm telling you, I'm looking at it. And the homie is not on the fucking show. So earlier you argued.
You're looking at what is reported online by someone, right? Or are you looking at WWE's?
I'm looking at the history of WWE.com. And it goes through specifically day by day. It's worth mentioning that this is the same batch of information that we have consistently used here on the show. And you're going to say
that's what you consistently use.
Well, yeah, I'm the only one who does any fucking research on this show.
Not always correct.
Well, I mean, what can you say to this? I feel like you've just been busted.
How have I been busted?
Well, because you just aren't.
Because, no, I just gave you the reason of why the title was given to Hogan. That's it. You're trying to be a Bob Costas, and I got you, pal.
No, I'm just trying.
You weren't a part of the conversations. You weren't a part of the meetings as to why Vince wanted to put the title on Hogan. And Hogan was, I'm looking at Hogan's run in it's 1993, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have it here. I don't have the, well, dude, I don't have my book here. I think you've got them there. And I'm not looking at what you have, so I'm sorry. I can't answer what you're saying is the case. I'm sure Dave Meltzer and all the rest of the dirt sheet world will jump all over it, but I'm giving you the exact reasons as to why the switch was made. If he was pulled from the deal, then he was pulled from the deal, but the original idea behind it and why Vince wanted to make the change. It wasn't done the day of. It was done weeks ahead of time. We had the pay-per-view encores all set up. It was so Hulk would be champion on a European tour for his farewell tour. If you don't want to believe that, then don't fucking believe it.
So you're saying he did appear on the European tour, and the internet has now colluded to make sure that no one reported it, and we kept it a secret.
Dude, I don't have my book in front of me. I'm giving you my recollection. You asked me why we made the switch with Hogan. I gave you the reason why we made the switch with Hogan and how that all came about. Now, if he didn't go on the tour, if he didn't make that, then I don't recall that because I didn't do research on a goddamn European tour. And if you have wrong information, you may have wrong information. If he didn't make the tour, maybe he didn't make the tour. But the reason why the title was switched to Hogan at WrestleMania 9 was because he was going on a European tour for a fucking farewell tour. Fuck you. To go over and be the champion.
So let me ask this. Is this, in your opinion, now that you know he didn't make the tour, that link?
I don't know if he did or not. I know that you're showing information. Well, Conrad, you don't know if he made the tour or not either. You're looking at goddamn information on the internet. Has the internet ever been wrong?
Can you find any evidence that he was there? I can find lots.
If you get my fucking books, I can tell you.
Okay, your books don't say he was there.
I don't believe you. Yeah, look at him. Conrad, again, I didn't do research on the tours that took place after WrestleMania. I did my research on WrestleMania 9. That's what we were talking about. You asked for a reason why the championship was made. If you want to talk about Hogan missing dates after the fact, then we can go back and we can look at that research and talk about that. But where we are right now and what I have, and you asked about WrestleMania 9, why the title switch was made, that's why it was made. That was the rationale that was given. If Hogan was booked on that and then didn't come, then he didn't go. I don't know because I don't have that information in front of me.
No, that's what I'm asking, though, is I I believe you when you're saying that's the rationale and that's the explanation that was given. I guess my follow-up question I'm trying to drill down on is, do you believe that Vince thought he needed an explanation? Do you think that Vince was somehow romanticized by Hogan and thought this is the magic bullet and was sold by this or on this by Hogan and needed a way to kind of spin it to Bret and everybody else, that this was essentially the farewell tour for Europe with him with the world title? Do you believe that that was the case, or do you believe that it's more likely that Hogan agreed to that and it was the truth, but then pulled the "that doesn't work for me, brother" routine?
What doesn't work for him? Winning the title?
Going to Europe.
But that was the whole reason for Hulk coming back for that summer. The whole situation was Hulk was coming back. We were going to get a European tour out of him, and he was gone after King of the Ring.
But it didn't go. So the question,
again, Conrad, I don't know, and I don't remember whether he went or not. I know that he was booked. I know that was the whole concept between bringing Hulk back during that time frame.
I guess what I'm saying is,
we had him for a short period of time. We knew that we had a small window to capitalize on Hulk coming back. We knew that we had an overseas tour.
So in your opinion, it's not that Hulk lied or that Vince misrepresented. It's he went and the internet's wrong.
Okay, you know what? Here we go. July 30th. It was July, so excuse the fuck out of me. Dortmund, Germany. Hogan beat Yokozuna. Offenbach, Germany. Hogan beat Yokozuna. Munich, Germany. Hogan beat Yokozuna. Berlin, Germany. Hogan beat Yokozuna. Edinburgh, Scotland. Hogan beat Yokozuna. London, England. Hogan beat Yokozuna. So it wasn't until July and August.
Was he the world champion then?
Nope. My time frame is off. Excuse the fuck out of me. But that was the goddamn idea.
We've got to make him the champion so he can go to Europe and not be the champion. God damn it, it's simple, pal.
It is.
You have consistently said he needed to go over there as champion. When he went,
that was Vince's rationale.
And he changed his mind about King of the Ring, maybe?
Well, no, he probably changed his ring about fucking ever getting back to SummerSlam and coming back after that because he didn't do SummerSlam that year.
This is fun.
Yeah, but see, you didn't do your rest of the research for the rest of the summer.
No, that's not fair. You have said consistently you wanted him to go there as champion. When he went in August,
which was the reason that we made the switch.
But he wasn't the fucking champion when he went.
Because things change.
I love you so much for that. When fucking Dave Meltzer says that, he's a jack off to you. But when you say it, it makes total sense.
You goddamn right it does. We sit on that wall to protect you, motherfucker, because you need our protection.
This was fun. Well, this wasn't a King of the Ring show, but we do want to go ahead and touch on what Hogan wrote in his book. He said, on April 4th, 93 at WrestleMania 9, I took the belt from Yokozuna for my record 5th championship. I pinned him 1-2-3, paving the way for our rematch. But before we got to King of the Ring a month later, Bret Hart got in my face and said, "You son of a bitch, Vince McMahon told me you won't drop the belt to me." I said, "Brother, I'm dropping the belt to Yokozuna. That's the deal I made." And Bret said, "That's not what Vince told me. He said you wouldn't drop the belt to me because I'm not in your league and I couldn't lace up your boots." I said, "Well, how about you and me get in a room with Vince right now?" Finally, the three of us, Vince, Bret, and myself, wound up in a room together. Bret said to Vince, "Didn't you tell me that Hulk Hogan wouldn't drop the belt to me?" And Vince said, quote, "Bret, that's just what you thought you heard." I had a feeling that Vince wasn't going to be straight up with Bret, and I think Bret felt the same way. But Vince was the boss, so there's nothing Bret could do about it except fume a little. I was fuming a little myself, to tell you the truth. I didn't care if Bret Hart got the belt or not. It just pissed me off that Vince had told me one thing and then told Bret another, because everybody thought it was my decision to not drop the belt to Bret. It made me look like I wasn't a team player. A month later, just as I'd agreed in my discussions with Vince McMahon, I dropped the belt back to Yokozuna at King of the Ring in Dayton, Ohio. Then I left the World Wrestling Federation. I wasn't fired, and I didn't quit. It was a mutual agreement that I would no longer wrestle for the company after I lost the championship to Yokozuna. I would just pursue other interests. There wasn't any animosity between me and the company. I just walked out, and that was it. But to tell you the truth, brother, it was a relief to move on. The drama had just gotten out of hand, with people bashing me left and right, calling me selfish for some of the things I had or hadn't done in my career, when it was always the promoter who had asked me to do those things. I had been down a long, hard road, and it was nice to finally take a breather. So, Bruce, we're going to discuss King of the Ring another time, but I wanted to at least include Hogan's testimony here because I know he's been villainized over this for years. Do you remember this sit-down and this confrontation and the three of them getting together in a room?
I remember hearing all about it, and from my recollection, that's pretty accurate. What Hulk what Hulk wrote there. The idea that, and again, it was me, Vince, and Pat, that we had from the beginning was pretty much that Hogan would beat Yoko for the belt, and he would drop the belt at King of the Ring after the European tour back to Yoko, and then we would move on with Bret and Yoko. That Hogan was short term. He was going on to do his Thunder in Paradise and do all of his Hollywood stuff. So there was never any intent to keep him beyond that. And Bret felt that Hulk should drop the title to him and pass the torch.
There's rumor and innuendo out there that you guys even did a photo shoot on a beach with Bret Hart and Hulk Hogan playing tug of war with the belt.
Never heard that one.
You don't remember that?
No, I sure don't.
If anybody has a picture of that, tweet it at the show, at Prichard Show. We would love to share that with our listeners. Do you remember there ever being a conversation about Bret Hart and Hulk Hogan having a match at SummerSlam?
There was always discussion about that. Wouldn't that be great? And Bret, that's what Bret wanted. Bret wanted to face Hulk and wanted Hulk to pass the torch to him.
At SummerSlam.
Either at King of the Ring or SummerSlam, yeah. But Vince didn't see that. Vince felt that was a babyface match and that it wouldn't do anyone any good. If Hulk lost to Bret, it would hurt Hulk and vice versa. Vince was never in favor of that match.
Why do you think Vince didn't like it? Because it was two baby faces and he had learned his lesson against Warrior?
Yes. And the fact that he wanted to push Bret and putting Bret against Hulk, he felt would hurt Bret at that time in a babyface situation.
If you haven't heard already, it's Smooth Sack Summer, Daddy. When you're playing in the summer sun, make sure you're scaped from pubes to bum. That's right, this is the summer to keep your balls cool while looking hot with Manscaped. The leaders in below-the-waist grooming are making sure we have a ball this summer by giving our pants partners everything they need to stay fresh. Dive headfirst into the Smooth Sack Summer by going to manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping with our promo code STW. The Manscaped Performance Package 4.0 has everything you need to prepare for that summer bod. They have built the ultimate grooming bundle for your summer grooming. It all starts with the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer that features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. The Lawnmower 4.0 has a 7,000 RPM motor, a new multi-function on-off switch that can engage a travel lock, and it gives you the ability to turn the 4000K LED spotlight on and off when needed for a more precise shave. Did I mention this trimmer is waterproof too? Beach, lake, or shower, this razor will devour even the strongest pubes. Now that we have the perfect haircut, use Manscaped's liquid formulations to keep that freshness even at the hottest summer barbecues. Most importantly, use the Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant to stay cool in the heat. With a soothing aloe vera formula, it's the best in business for the below-the-waist freshness, and this clear drying formula will keep you looking good while smelling good. Manscaped even threw in 2 free gifts with their Performance Package 4.0, the Manscaped Boxers and the Shed Travel Bag. Wearing sandals with some nasty looking toenails during the summer months? Well, take a look at the Shears 2.0, a luxury nail grooming kit. This kit includes stainless steel cutters, tweezers, and grooming scissors. With the Performance Package, your balls will be ready to impress, but make sure you cover the rest with Shears 2.0. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code STW at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code STW at manscaped.com. It's smooth sack summer, boys. Get on board or get left behind.
And now here we go. November 24th, 1997, they defeat the Legion of Doom to win the tag team titles. Coming to the ring for this match, Road Dogg and Billy Gunn are actually wearing the Legion of Doom shoulder pads, which they had previously stolen. And Road Dogg says, "What a flush," to knock off the famous "Oh, what a rush." Kind of an interesting tidbit here. During the match, JR gave a plug for the ECW pay-per-view, which was coming up the following weekend, November to Remember 97. And after they get the win, Gunn and Road Dogg quickly run up the ramp and out of the arena and literally run out to their car. And JR said they looked like bank robbers leaving the bank in their getaway car. How did LOD feel about losing the titles to the Outlaws, a fairly new tag team who had previously not been top guys as single stars? And LOD, 10 years prior to this, were arguably 2 of the biggest stars in the business.
Well, I think at the time they're not really going to have a problem with it. And you look at the talent of each guy individually and then combined as a tag team. They're 2 talented guys, and everybody's going to have that first time for that big push. And they realized that this was the first time for the big push for the New Age Outlaws. So I don't think that Joe and Mike had any problem putting these guys over and giving them that rub to the next level. They knew what they needed to get to that next level. And frankly, the Legion of Doom knew that for them to have credible opponents, they had to put somebody over. And these 2 guys could go.
Yeah, and it's an interesting time in the company, too, because you guys had sort of refocused on the tag team division, but there weren't a lot of stars. But obviously the Road Warriors were a big deal, and nobody knows that more than Road Dogg. This was Billy Gunn's 4th time as tag champ, but this is Road Dogg's first time as champ, first time holding gold in the company here. So it's a big deal to him growing up in the business. And he's probably marking out as a kid who grew up in Georgia. They just beat the fucking Road Warriors. Kind of a big deal. There's a rumor that when they're driving from town to town, Road Dogg would actually prop his belt up in the back of his car so like people who were behind him and as they're passing them would see the tag belt. And allegedly, he even wore the belt through some airports. Can you confirm this rumor and innuendo about how tickled Road Dogg was to be tag champ for the first time?
I can definitely can confirm the wearing the belt in the airport. That I can confirm. But doesn't everybody put their championship on the back window so everybody knows? I mean, otherwise, how the hell do you know when you're driving? You can't wear it while you're driving, so you got to put it in the window so everybody knows champ coming through. Dude.
Not long after they win the titles, JR started referring to them as the Outlaws on TV. And at this point, the name is sticking. It's the New Age Outlaws. We see LOD face Shawn Michaels and Triple H in the main event, and the Outlaws here would interfere, causing a DQ. But in the process, they shave Hawk's head, and then DX powerbombs Animal from the ring through the announcer's table at ringside. So it's a little bit of a glimpse into the future with the Outlaws working with DX. And this is done, obviously, to sort of give the Outlaws the rub. Not only are they squashing Legion of Doom and embarrassing them and humiliating them, but they're doing it with 2 top guys, Shawn Michaels and Triple H. At this point, Hawk has been...
And if I may interrupt you real quick, and the one other thing, if you go back and you watch that, you'll see Shawn and Hunter kind of leaning on the ropes and doing the old finger on the lip like they're in deep thought, like, that might be 2 good additions to DX. Just a little subtle, as you say, a precursor to what may come, and I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, listen, I think it was a cool angle here because Hawk is really, both of these guys are really identified by the face paint, the shoulder pads, and the crazy hair. And to have someone shave Hawk's hair, it's a pretty big deal. Obviously, it's not the long flowing mane, but it is a very identifiable haircut. And it's really well done here. December to Dismember 2006 is the company's only pay-per-view once they're relaunched as their own brand. Let's talk about this show for a minute. This is where the second title change would happen for the ECW World title. This time it would be Big Show losing the belt in an Elimination Chamber match. But that's not the story. The story is that it's one of the worst pay-per-views of all time. It only drew 90,000 buys on pay-per-view, of which only 55,000 were domestic. So process that. Only 55,000 people in North America purchased this. And 4,800 fans showed up to a building that was set up for around 8,000 in Augusta, Georgia. This is the end of ECW only pay-per-views forever, and it won Worst Major Show of the Year in the Observer fan poll, and that's hard to argue. On a scale of 1 to 10, Bruce, how would you rank this December to Dismember 2006 show?
A negative 4 stars, sir.
It's worth mentioning.
Is that like a rating?
Yeah, it is. It's worth mentioning that the Big Show wanted off the road here, and that's why they had him drop the belt. He's gotten into some back and knee problems, and once off the road so badly that he's even stating publicly he's not going to re-sign a new contract, and he's walking away, even though he's making $1 million a year. This was 11 years ago. Do you remember the conversations with Show about retiring during this time, and why didn't it happen?
Show was tired and beat up and just tired of being on the road and working every day. And as a giant, had a lot of wear and tear on his joints, and he just needed some rest. And Paul went through these phases. Paul White, he went through these phases of where he just would get beat up. And you have to give special consideration to a guy that's 7 foot tall and 400 plus pounds going out and punishing his body every single night. It doesn't heal the same way, and it's a lot more wear and tear than the guy that's 200 pounds and in great shape. So at this time, Paul just needed a rest.
On the actual card itself, we have the Hardys defeating Eminem. By the way, not everybody on this pay-per-view is actually on ECW. Balls would go over Stryker, Elijah Burke, and Sylvester Terkay would go over the FBI. Daivari would go over Dreamer. Kevin Thorne and Ariel would defeat Mike Knox and Kelly Kelly. And in the main event, Bobby Lashley would win the Elimination Chamber, which featured Big Show, RVD, Hardcore Holly, CM Punk, and Test. The plan wasn't for Holly to be in the match. Sabu was advertised, but in storyline during the show, Sabu was shown as being attacked and then left laying in the back, so he was written out of the match. Usually this is done to cover an injury, but it was reported here that was not the case. And depending on who you believe, Vince McMahon was personally not happy with Sabu. He allegedly felt like Sabu didn't care about regular matches and only wanted to do stunts, which Vince didn't respect. Sabu was apparently indifferent at tapings and just rubbed folks the wrong way, and by folks I mean Vince. So he had Umaga squash him on TV prior to this, and now replaced him on the pay-per-view with Hardcore Holly. Allegedly, Heyman is upset at all this and feels Sabu would really shine inside the Elimination Chamber. The crowd agreed and chanted bullshit during the segment where Sabu was left laying to replace Holly. Now that is Brian Alvarez's testimony. Meltzer would say, contrary to what has been written elsewhere in the wake of Heyman's dismissal, Paul wrote the entire show, including all the eliminations in the main event, the crowning of Lashley as champion, and the removal of Sabu from the Elimination Chamber. Sabu is one of the many self-destructing guys. Apparently, there was a situation at the Nassau Coliseum where Sabu was unable to get through a promo. And by saying that, think of the length given to a Sabu promo. And Heyman went to Vince and suggested he be removed from the show. Sabu has not been fired, but needs time off and probably should be getting some sort of help. Vince did not change a number of things the day of the show, as has been reported. So, you were there. What's rumor? What's innuendo? What really happened? And specifically, I want to talk about the Sabu situation. Because on the one hand, there's reports coming out that it's a Vince call and Heyman's upset. Meltzer says that's completely backwards. It was Heyman's idea because Sabu was not in a good place.
Okay. Well, it's important to point out that during the show, at least a good part of it, I was not there. I was there in the morning. I was there for the meeting. I was there for the aftermath of the meeting. And then I went to the hotel because I'd had surgery done and my face was swollen and I was not feeling well. So I went back to the hotel to take a nap, and I didn't come back until, I don't know, maybe 8, 9 o'clock that night. So for a lot of the crap during the day, I wasn't there, but I was there for the shit earlier in the meeting and the subsequent meeting after the meeting. This was a situation where Heyman didn't take Vince's suggestions and didn't make the changes that Vince had wanted him to make, and Vince was adamant getting his way, and Heyman was adamant to just buck the system, if you will. Heyman's idea originally on this, they talk about how Heyman wrote the show and blessed the show and all this shit. I believe Dave Lagana wrote the show, but Paul fought tremendously that the finish of the Elimination Chamber was that CM Punk gets in the ring and that Big Show taps out to the Anaconda Vice in 15 seconds. And then as everyone enters the Elimination Chamber, that CM Punk would place them all in the Anaconda Vice and make everyone tap out and become the ECW champion. That was Heyman's pitch. Vince was still stuck on, you mean to tell me that skinny little tattooed fuck is going to choke out the Big Show? The Anaconda Vice, sir. And that was all Vince heard. And Vince was furious that Paul was still fighting this one fight. And Vince, knew they were taking it off a Big Show, but he saw Bobby Lashley as the guy and really wanted to elevate Bobby Lashley. And that was how Vince saw this Elimination Chamber. It was ugly. It was bad. It was a moment where there were points that I wanted to just slap the shit out of Paul and say, man, just shut the fuck up. It's, we're past the point of arguing now. Just let's go and get this done. And Paul continued to fight and continued to fight and continued. One more volley, if I may. And then one more volley turned into his last volley. Vince was just done. Didn't want to see him anymore. And that was kind of the end of Paul. The Sabu stuff in particular, going back is to how Vince saw Sabu. Vince saw Sabu as a character, and Vince liked the Sabu character, but he wanted Sabu to speak. Heyman did not want Sabu to speak.
Because he can't.
And felt, I'm sorry?
Because he can't.
He can. Actually, he can be very engaging and very entertaining as Terry Brunk. However, as Sabu saw himself one way and Heyman saw him one way, and neither one were willing to try and broaden that character beyond what they saw. And that did infuriate Vince, the fact that they didn't want to do more with it. So, in my opinion, I kind of think that Heyman, because Heyman feels that he's the one that first gave Sabu the exposure and made Sabu that was his creation. When in reality, Sabu's creation, or the Sheik's creation. But Vince felt very strongly that Sabu as a character and speaking and elevating that character was the way to go. And both guys, Sabu and Paul, didn't feel that way. So I don't know if there was maneuvering behind the scenes on Paul's part, but it was always to take, not going to have him in the match, and that was done ahead of time.
Meltzer wrote, this was almost without question the worst promoted pay-per-view in company history. He says that a week out, only one match had been announced, and reportedly Paul just wanted to announce the main event, kind of like they did in some of the old ECW days. And Vince always thought that the main event carried the show and is what should be hammered home on TV. But Dave says that this was taken to a new level, where just 2 days prior to the show, the WWE does an email blast announcing just 2 matches, quote, and much more. and they were asking $40 for this. Do you remember the promotion leading up to the pay-per-view and thinking this was the shits and just knowing this thing's going to bomb before you even walked in the building?
It was the shits. It was the shits from the get-go. Doing the Elimination Chamber on an ECW pay-per-view, I didn't like because it was something that we had wanted to brand for Raw. There was just so many things about it that I personally didn't like, and it was hodgepodge, and they really didn't know what the hell they were going to do. And the show was almost being booked like a last-minute live television show.
December to December 2006 got this in the Observer fan poll. Thumbs up, 0.8%. Thumbs down, 90.3%. Thumbs in the middle, 9%. What say you, Bruce? This is 2 thumbs down, am I right?
I'm not going to. How do you get 0.8%? It's either thumb up or thumb down.
Well, you had 3.
How is it 0.8%?
You had 3 people vote thumbs up. You had 353 people vote thumbs down. You had 35 people vote thumbs in the middle.
Okay. Yeah, the show sucked.
Meltzer wrote, another story is that the talent in ECW would go to Heyman with ideas, and Heyman would come back and say Vince McMahon nixed them. When the talent would later ask McMahon about those ideas, McMahon would say he had never heard them in the first place. You saw a lot of this over the years, Bruce. Does this sound right to you that A, Paul would say he presented something he didn't just because he didn't want to do it, or B, McMahon would babyface himself and put the heat on the other guy and act like he hadn't heard it just to have a good relationship with the talent?
I would have to probably guess that based on experience that the ideas were never pitched, because Vince would be one that would be all too ready if there was an idea that he didn't care for.
He'd shit all over
somebody
it.
Came to him, that he would be happy to explain to them why he didn't like an idea. He didn't shy away from that. It wouldn't be like, no, I never heard that. It would be like, no, I was told that. Here's why I don't like it.
Okay. It was also reported Heyman was also blamed for mistiming the show and it ending 32 minutes early, but that aspect of timing a show goes through so many different people's hands before the show even starts. There are many who could have picked up on that timing mistake before the show, as well as it being clear when the show was going on. Allegedly, the show ending so early is one of the reasons so many folks demanded refunds of DirecTV. Bruce, how can all of this be Paul's fault with so many other folks involved in this whole process with timing the show?
Well, essentially, if you're the head writer, it is going to fall on you, and it is your responsibility, and you should know it before it ever gets to anybody else. I mean, that's 101. But the fact that it got through so many hands, whoever was at gorilla position should have got it beforehand. And maybe you know what? Maybe it was timed out right, but maybe guys went home early. Maybe other shit changed in the middle of the show. I don't know.
Internally, this is from Meltzer. Internally, the blame for the pay-per-view went to Heyman, who was supposed to get the script of events several weeks ago. Heyman didn't finish the script until last week, and all the finishes and much of the show, particularly undercard, was his. Because of the timing of the finished script, the only match Vince and Stephanie had major input on was the Elimination Chamber match. The only thing that may have been different is the eliminations, as we have disputed stories as to whether Heyman wanted to protect Punk and have him beat the Big Show first with the Anaconda device, so he'd come off strong, even though he would later be eliminated. So you just kind of shared that story with us. But this whole script coming in late thing, is that news to you, or is that the way you remember it?
Well, first of all, that's fucking bullshit. We would turn in pay-per-view scripts. If the pay-per-view was on a Sunday, we would turn in scripts usually on Thursday or Friday beforehand.
Well, there you go.
So we would talk about matches, we would talk about finishes and all of that ahead of time. But there's no, good God, if somebody were to turn in a pay-per-view script 3 weeks in advance, Vince would laugh at that. So that's not the way it was done. That's somebody who wants to spin something and is all rumor and innuendo and total 100% fucking horse shit.
Ladies and gentlemen, today's episode is brought to you by Blue Chew. We're coming to you from the Blue Chew studios, and the nights are getting longer, but the breeze isn't the only thing that's getting stiff. Come on, you know the deal. Guys, we all know confidence can take you far in life, but that's especially true in the bedroom when it's time to step up to the plate. And that's where Blue Chew comes in. Blue Chew is a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredients as both Viagra and Cialis, but in chewable form and at a fraction of the cost. Take these dudes anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. Now, the process is simple, y'all. You'll sign up at BlueChew.com. You'll consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. Now, here's the best part. It's all done online. That means no visits to the doctor's office. That means no awkward conversations. That means no waiting in line for pharmacy. Blue Chew's tablets are made right here in the USA, folks, and they prepare and ship directly to your door, all in a discreet package. So if you could benefit from extra confidence when it's time to perform, chew it and do it. Let's have some better sex, shall we? We've got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code WRESTLE at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's BlueChew.com. The promo code is WRESTLE to receive your first month free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast. And Bruce's winner.
He was born on March 24th, 1965. He's a 52-year-old man now.
It's a young man.
Absolutely. Mark Calloway was the birth name, of course, and from right there in your old stomping grounds, Houston, Texas. He starts wrestling in 1984 for World Class. He makes his debut there as Texas Red. He runs through a few gimmicks early in his career. He bounces around Memphis. He's managed by Dutch Mantel. He has some matches with Kerry Von Erich. He wins some gold in Memphis and then eventually moves on to WCW. While he's in Memphis, he is wrestling as the Punisher or the Master of Pain. He finds his way to WCW in 1989, and he gets his first big break there when Sid Vicious is injured, and Dan Spivey is looking for a tag team partner to be his new Skyscraper tag team partner. And Mean Mark Callis gets the nod. I think he starts as Calloway there, but then later changes his name to Mean Mark Callis. And he has his maybe biggest victory in WCW when he beats Flying Brian Pillman at Clash of the Champions 11. He uses a heart punch as a finisher at this time. And he gets yet another manager, which I find interesting considering what happened at WrestleMania 30. The manager is Paul E. Dangerously. So, in a weird way, The Undertaker was one of the original Paul Heyman guys.
Oh, Happy Heyman, the jovial Jew.
We can't say the name Paul Heyman on this show without you breaking out a fun impression for us, though. Hypothetically, if Paul E. Dangerously at the time was going to champion his man, Mean Mark Callis, in a creative meeting, that he should go over Flying Brian Pillman and what would probably be considered an upset since Pillman was pretty over at that point. What might that sound like?
If I may have another volley, sir, allow me to explain to you why this big red-headed monster needs to take out the flying one with a heart punch. He will destroy him, sir. And Pillman is down in 5 seconds, never to return because everyone knows he has a heart condition.
I love that. Thank you for that. His next big shot is for the U.S. title against Lex Luger at the Great American.
I will one day get him booked, and I will deliver a defeat to him at the hands of my... I don't know what the fuck he called. What was he called, Brock?
The Beast Incarnate?
No, his client, or what the hell?
He's an advocate for...
I will be the advocate for the man that will finally defeat him in an event they will hail as Mania of Wrestling. Sir, you may continue. If you would like the event to go 10 seconds, I don't have a problem with that either.
Here's what's crazy. When he's managing him here, that match we're referencing at WrestleMania 30 is 25 years later. That's absurd.
A little bit.
His biggest match that we talked about in our previous episode, which if you really want to hear about the debut of The Undertaker, we encourage you to go check out Survivor Series 1990. It's available in the archives, and it's notable for two things, well, a lot of things, but the two biggest ones being The Undertaker's debut when he was Kane the Undertaker. And what else is notable about Survivor Series 1990, Bruce?
Cowboy Cooker.
I was hoping you'd do that. Anyway, you guys kind of discover him at this Great American Bash 1990. He is challenging for the United States Championship. The champ at the time, of course, is the Total Package Lex Luger, and that winds up being his last major appearance. He slowly fades away and then signs with the WWF. Now, there's various different reports about how that happens. Let's touch on it again here. Do you remember it that Mark was released from his contract by WCW, or that he waited his contract out so he could sign with Vince?
He waited his contract out. His contract was coming up for renewal, and I got a phone call one day from
Paul Heyman, sir, if I may. Are you aware of the young man named Mean Mark Callis?
And I was a big fan of Mark's, going back to 1987 and seeing him in WCCW or USWA, whatever the hell it was. And I was very, very aware of him. I was a big fan of him, and I said, yeah, definitely interested. And so then began the pursuit to get Mean Mark into the WWF.
So let's talk about it. He debuts on November 19th, 1993 in Rochester, New York, defeating a gentleman named Jim McPherson. What are your favorite matches with Jim McPherson, Bruce?
I have no idea who the hell Jim McPherson is. Sorry.
The next night, he defeats Dusty Rhodes in Syracuse, New York, and he's also interviewed by Brother Love, and that airs on the Wrestling Challenge episode from December 23rd, 1990. So if you'd like to see his first ever interview that he did for television with the WWF, you could go check that out. Wrestling Challenge, December 23rd, 1990. But then he makes his television debut that we're all familiar with on Survivor Series 1990, and that is November 22nd. So he actually debuted with the company a couple of days ahead of time. And when he makes his debut, of course, on Survivor Series, he's the mystery partner for the $1 Million Man's team, and has one hell of a debut. Again, that whole episode is available in the archives, 1990 Survivor Series. Catch everybody up, though, again, Bruce, as to why you would want to debut a character like this at a house show rather than a pay-per-view ahead of time.
Just to get his sea legs under him, and he had never worked in our ring before. Our ring was bigger than the WCW rings. It was much less forgiving. It also had ropes versus cables, and just didn't want the very first time for him to step into a WWF ring to be on pay-per-view.
So Paul Bearer is introduced as the Undertaker's new manager on the Brother Love show, and this aired on Superstars on February 16th, 1991. So if you'd like to see Paul Bearer in his debut for the Undertaker, it's February 16th, 1991 on Superstars. But a lot of people may not realize that Percy Pringle was actually, once upon a time, working with Mark Calloway in a prior life. Catch everybody up, Bruce.
Well, Percy Pringle was actually Mean Mark or the Punisher, whatever the hell name he was using at that time. He was actually his first manager in Dallas for his very first match. And I want to say that one of Mark's first matches was against Bruiser Brody. And Brody was actually very kind to him and helped him out quite a bit and didn't just go out and beat the shit out of him for that match. But it was ironic that his first manager would end up really being his last manager.
It's very interesting to me because we kind of get to this Vince NWO storyline pretty quickly. On the January 14th edition of SmackDown, he does this famous promo that most of us remember where he's talking to himself in a mirror, talking about how the WWF had cancer because of Ric Flair and how he had no choice but to do what he has to do, and he wasn't going to talk himself out of it. At one point, he starts shaking with his eyes rolling into his head and saying it feels good. And then he says he's not going to let Ric Flair kill what he created because he's going to kill what he created. And he's going to inject the WWF with a lethal dose of poison. He says he's going to kill it and with him and the NWO. And he swings around in his chair, and it has the NWO letters painted on the back of the chair. Did you produce that segment?
I did.
Where was that shot? Was that shot at TV day of?
was shot at TV. Day of, we took a small, like a single dressing room. We had to build a damn platform for the look that we wanted because the way that the mirrors were. So we had to build a platform that was going to raise Vince's chair up quite a bit. And then, we did the NWO letters backwards on the back of the chair so it would read correctly in the reflection in the mirror. And a lot of lighting effects. Remember, it was really dark and kind of goofy in there. But, yeah, that was me and Vince locked in a room for a long time.
The whole segment is broken down and shown throughout SmackDown, and it's a little over 8 minutes long in total, and it was very well done. So kudos to you guys for doing it. But what sticks out to me is that Meltzer would report in the February 4th Observer that they didn't sign their contracts until late January. And this promo is happening on the 14th of January. Is that accurate? And if the guys had not signed...
Oh, my God, Dave Meltzer wasn't accurate? Yeah, Dave Meltzer was not accurate.
Okay, you made the Home Alone face, but this is an audio podcast, so if you're going to do...
Did it again.
If you're going to do silent movie gags, you need to remember that this isn't a video show yet. Okay, let's move along.
Meltzer was incorrect. They were signed. They were ready. We wouldn't have done it if we didn't have them.
So there's a story going around, and this could just be internet legend at this point, but supposedly the Dudley Boys are there, and Scott Hall's trying to be chummy with them and says something along the lines of, "Hey man, I love your finish. What do you call that?" And they tell him, "Oh, it's the Dudley Death Drop. We appreciate that. Thanks, man." And he says, "Yeah, man, it looks great. I can't wait to kick out of it." And that supposedly rubs them the wrong way. Now, I feel like that's just good-natured ribbing, but given the climate at the time where there's been speeches about these guys being like everybody else and nothing's changing and don't worry, it might feel like more than that. Do you remember hearing this story?
I've heard the story, and I take it exactly as you just laid it out, that it was a rib.
Yeah, I mean, that's just good-natured ball busting, and that doesn't
Scott Hall.
Yeah.
He says that kind of shit to everybody. But I think maybe the timing of it, coupled with everything else going on at the time and tensions, it's like, well, what the fuck? This guy's going to kick out of my finish?
Right.
I think that just grew legend unto itself.
We haven't mentioned yet, but this pay-per-view is happening in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It's at the Bradley Center. It's February 17th. And they actually start the pay-per-view with the three guys making their debut. And they use their old NWO music. They actually turn the color on the television to black and white as they walk to the ring, and they get a huge pop. And Jim Ross made mention on commentary how they did more to destroy WCW than any other entity. That joke writes itself. Once they got in the ring, Nash was the first to speak. He talked about the amount of heat they had with the boys and that they got frightening stares. And then he talked about the words that have been used to describe them. He says they want a fair chance and a clean slate to prove to you great fans that nobody does it quite like us. Hall's next to speak. Of course, he starts with, "Hey, yo." And he says that they're not the bad guys.
Yo.
They're fans, and they just want the opportunity to work with all the great WWF superstars. And they didn't want any trouble because deep down, they're just like you. And then Hogan takes the mic and gets a huge pop before he even speaks, with lots of fans starting the Hogan chants. And then says that Scott and Kevin were right, and they're just like all the fans, just a little richer and a little more famous, but we're not here to kill the WWF. We're here to make it better. And he thanked Vince McMahon for the opportunity and that he wouldn't let him down. He says, "God bless Vince McMahon and God bless all of you." And he closed with, "God bless America and thank you for the chance." So this is obviously written pretty sarcastically here, Bruce, but at the same time, it's done so to maybe create some doubt in the minds of the fans. Are they good guys? Are they bad guys? Later on in the show, during the main event, it's Chris Jericho defending his undisputed championship against Steve Austin. The NWO runs in and attacks Austin, including Hall hitting him with the Stone Cold Stunner and allowing Jericho to defeat him and retain the title. And then they spray paint NWO on Austin's back. What was the reaction to this? Did Austin have any programs or any problems with this program as far as them coming in and getting the heat on him right away? Or would this been something that Austin volunteered for, since this is going to be the new hot angle? I want in on that.
Well, I don't think Steve volunteered for it, but he didn't have necessarily a problem with doing it because it was a way to introduce the NWO and to put the NWO where we wanted them, as heels. So you attack, the top baby faces. But he didn't have a problem with it that I can remember.
The next night on Raw, the show opens up with Austin coming out to the ring, and he demands the NWO come down. They end up coming out, but they stay at the top of the ramp, and after a few minutes of going back and forth, they just go back to the dressing room. Austin ends up getting arrested, and after the commercial break, he's in the back of the cop car with the NWO standing there looking at him, and Hall is mocking him. So did you guys know right away, okay, here's our plan. We're going to program Hall with Austin? Because it feels like even in their first night, with him doing the stunner and then mocking him the next night, that was the plan right away. It's going to be Hall and Austin.
It was, and because we wanted to have somewhere to go. So we figured people would be looking for that Austin Hulk match. Don't give it to them right away. Let's build to that, and let's get people behind it. Let's get them demanding it, really wanting it. So the idea was to go Hall and Austin, and Rock and Hogan. Felt those are the two best matchups for the first time matchups.
That seems really crazy to me that you guys wouldn't try to book Hogan Austin. I mean, it never happened, but it seems like it would have been awesome. And, obviously I'm not disappointed with what we got, so calm the fuck down. I'm just saying.
Rock and Hulk was just as attractive. You got to do one of them first. If we had done Austin and Hulk, they said, goddamn, why didn't you guys do Rock and Hulk? It was right there. You got to do one of them.
So in your head, Austin is not a notch above Rock. They're 1A and 1B.
At that time they were pretty damn equal.
Okay. Later in the show, the NWO shown outside the building getting ready to leave, but Hogan says they have to attend to some personal business. So to come back and get him in about half an hour. And then later, Hogan comes out to a huge pop, and there's giant chants of Hogan. Meltzer says, he said they'd done it all together, fought the Russians, slammed the 700-pound Andre, and then the fans turned on him, drove him out of the WWF, and he said he's been waiting many years, and now he could finally deliver an important message to the fans, kiss my ass. He said he built pro wrestling, and there was no bigger star past or present than him. So The Rock comes out, does the big stare down where they look one direction and the other, and then half the crowd's chanting Rocky, the other half is chanting Hogan, and The Rock challenges him to a match at WrestleMania 18. Hogan took quite a bit of time to answer, but finally agreed, and they shook hands. Good luck, Hogan said. You're going to need it. And then The Rock replied, not as much as you, brother, and gives him the rock bottom. So The Rock walks up the ramp, and then he's immediately jumped by Hall and Nash. They throw Rock into the ring, and Hogan starts whipping him with his leather belt. Hall gives him the razor's edge, and Nash hits him with the jackknife powerbomb. Hogan goes outside, gets a hammer, and hits Rock in the back of the head with it. And then gives him the big leg drop, because that's the death blow, not the hammer.
You're damn right.
The leg drop.
Hammer's just going to get him down, by God, but once you drop that leg, shiznit's over.
And then Hall, with the entire crowd, counts the pinfall, and then they spray paint Rock. So, the night before, they leave Austin laying and spray paint him. The next night, they leave Rock laying and spray paint him. But the thing that everybody really remembers from this is the first time Hogan and Rock are facing off, and they just don't do anything and just look to the crowd, and everybody's going nuts. Is that something are there two better guys that know how to do that than The Rock and Hulk Hogan, to just milk the crowd like that?
They were the best. They were great. They knew it. You feel it. That's what's missing today, is feeling and emotion. So yeah, they were great, man. They just went out there and felt it and went with it.
I'm curious what the reaction was backstage. Were you in Gorilla when that's going on?
I probably was, or close to it.
When you're seeing this happen on the screen, what's Vince's reaction?
Well, the reaction to what? The reaction to the stare down and the reaction of the crowd?
Yes.
Loving it because the audience was into it. It was two of the biggest stars the business had ever seen, old and young. The old stud and the young buck in there, and the crowd was eating it up. They really wanted it.
Who wrote the promo for Hogan? Is this something that at this point we're scripting word for word, or is this bullet points? And who's kind of going over and coaching him up on this? Is this something he's working with Vince on?
Probably Brian Gewirtz and Vince.
Okay.
Brian was a great writer.
Why in kayfabe land is there no one to come help The Rock if there's allegedly here to kill the entire company? When they start, smashing the top guys here, Rock and Austin, and back-to-back nights, where are all the baby faces?
I think that Vince had put out an edict that if anyone comes out and tries to save them, they'd be fired. Okay. I think I'm saying that was like part of the storyline in the show.
Sure. So after the commercial, here's where we start getting to the fun stuff. They load The Rock into an ambulance, and as they tried to leave, the NWO stopped them with a big semi-truck, and then they start beating the hell out of the ambulance with crowbars. They chained up the ambulance so Rock, who was unconscious, could not escape. And then Hogan, wink wink, drove the semi at about 100 miles an hour into the side of the ambulance. And those in the building have said the crowd was like 40%, 50% behind the NWO during this angle. They're cheering on The Rock being attacked inside the ambulance. And Hogan is so excited that he did crotch chops. And the NWO then looks into the back of the ambulance, presumably to see The Rock's remains, and then run off into the night. And Jim Ross famously says tragedy has struck a WWF superstar. What are your memories of doing this? Did y'all shoot this the night before?
No, we shot it the night of.
Wow.
And it was pre-taped. It was very ambitious. It was friggin' cold in Chicago. But that was a Vince McMahon production. We had everybody out there, and we did pre-tape it, make sure everybody was safe. But it got done while the show was taking place inside the arena. And then it aired as if it was live. And I dare say it worked out pretty good. And JR kind of summed it up because tragedy had struck a WWF superstar. And if tragedy has struck anyone in your family, I'd go to rgtaylor4law.com for some good legal advice.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson here to tell you a little more about what AdFreeShows.com is all about. Get early, ad-free access to more than a dozen of your favorite wrestling podcasts every single week, starting at just $9. That's less than 20 cents an episode each month. And yes, you can listen to them all directly through Apple Podcasts or your regular podcast apps. How easy is that? Ad-Free Shows also has thousands of hours worth of bonus content and docuseries like Title Chase, Eric Fires Back, Conversations with Conrad, and The Insiders. Plus new series like The Book with David Crockett, Monday Mailbags with Mike Chioda and Nick Patrick, and a whole lot more. And you want to talk about early? You can't get any earlier than listening to the shows live. You can be a part of the live studio audience as we record the podcast. Plus, ride shotgun alongside your favorite childhood heroes for live watch-alongs, Q&As, and other interactive experiences every single month. Come on now, see for yourself what thousands of other wrestling fans from around the world have discovered, that AdFreeShows.com is the best value in wrestling. Check it out today, and hey, when you do, the first week is completely free. AdFreeShows.com.